Okay, we left off with low extraction drugs, and now we're going to do our predictions when we have high extraction drugs. So recall that with high extraction drugs, the rate limiting step is blood flow to the liver. So this is our shiny dairy where we have so much energy and the enzymes are really revved up and work really, really well. So this is our shiny dairy, and this is really, really high. Therefore, blood flow is our rate limiting step. So everything comes into that dairy and is boxed up right away. And they're standing around waiting for more milk to come in. So here, clearance is, the rate limiting step is Q. So clearance is approximated by Q, or that blood flow. And remember, FH, here we have route dependence because it's dependent on all of these things. And a great amount of the drug is removed as it goes through the liver, so the fraction that escapes that first pass effect is relatively low. So with those things in mind, as we go through, we're going to try to make our predictions on our CSS average total and our CSS average free, both given IV and PO. But this time, the difference between IV and PO is there's going to be a difference because we have route dependence or route dependence. It depends on whether it's given IV or PO. So recall that clearance in this case is approximated by Q, and our fraction that escapes the first pass effect is dependent upon Q over intrinsic clearance times fraction unbound. So again, here is our CSS average IV. This is total. We'll start with total, and it's salt form, and usually we think of bioavailable dose rate, but bioavailability is 1 in this case because it's IV, so we don't have to worry about bioavailability. So it's really just drug in over drug out, which in this case is clearance. But for a low extraction drug, we know clearance is approximated by Q. So it turns out that it's just our salt form, our dose rate, and our Q that determines our CSS total if given IV. So what if there's a change in intrinsic clearance? Not an issue. What if there's a change in binding? Not an issue. Okay. Now, let's think about what's happening with our free concentration. Remember, when we have free, we have total times fraction unbound. Here's our total, salt form times dose rate over clearance. We're going to put in our clearance for a high E drug, and it's going to be our blood flow. But we do need to multiply it times fraction unbound to get our free concentration. So in this case, if there was an increase in fraction unbound, we would see a change in our free concentration or our active drug, but what we measured would be no change. So maybe this patient is suffering from toxic side effects, and we look at the level and we see that the concentration has not changed. We may be fooled by that, right? So we have to really understand this so that we can help the team understand. Okay, so here, this was IV. And now we're going to do PO, and we're going to expect a difference because of route dependence. So here is a high extraction drug. A high extraction drug that's non-restrictively clear. That means the protein does not protect. So all drug is fair game, and it's given PO. This is going to be the toughest thing we do in class, I think. So hang with me. So we have our total concentration at steady state given PO. So we're doing total and we're doing PO. So we have salt form times our bioavailability, which is FA times FG times FH times dose rate all over clearance. So this is true for every drug. Now we're going to go in and put in what we know about a high extraction drug. Clearance is approximated by Q. So we'll put Q in for clearance here. And FH is approximated by Q over intrinsic clearance times fraction unbound. So that all goes in for FH. So, oh, this is bad. Don't look at this. So then these Q's will cancel, won't they? The reason I don't like you to rearrange for like this is it looks like you start to think that intrinsic clearance determines clearance, but it doesn't. I'm sorry, that should be taken out of there too. I'll do that before I'm going to repost these. So these Q's will cancel. Okay, so if there's a decrease in Q, will it affect our total concentration given its steady state? If given orally? No, because that decrease in Q decreases our fraction that escapes first pass effect. If you slow the blood flow going through the liver, more of the drug can be eliminated, and you have a decrease in your fraction that escapes the first pass effect. But you're also going to decrease the clearance to the same amount. So you have a decrease in drug in and a decrease in drug out to the same extent. So that's why that's the case. Now, I have these little stars by the fraction unbound. This is the trickiest part, I think. This fraction unbound, I have these stars by these because if you have a non-restrictively cleared drug, remember the liver sees all the drug as being free. The drug sees both the bound and the unbound drug as being able to be metabolized. So they see it all as free. So when you're talking about a non-restrictive drug, as it comes into the liver, like it is here, this fraction unbound becomes really like 1 to the liver. The liver sees it all as being free. So this becomes a non-entity. This becomes 1, so it's not going to actually alter. If there's a binding change, if more of it becomes free, does the liver care? No, because it saw it all as being free to begin with. Right? So that's the trickiest thing. We'll work with this a little bit more as we go on, but that's the trickiest. Okay. Now, what if we look at, we have root dependence, right? We talked about that. So now we have to talk about if we want to look at free concentration. So free concentration, non-restrictive, high extraction drug, all those things. High E drug, which means clearance is approximated by Q, and fraction that escapes first pass effect is approximated by Q over intrinsic clearance times fraction unbound. Non-restrictively cleared means that the liver sees it all as being free, the protein does not protect it from being cleared, and it's given PO, so we have to consider bioavailability. So again, salt form times bioavailability times dose rate over clearance, but we have to multiply it times fraction unbound to get that free concentration. Now we put in what we know about our high extraction drug. Clearance is equal to Q, and fraction that escapes first pass effect is equal to Q over intrinsic clearance times fraction unbound. But that fraction unbound, because it's non-restrictively cleared, becomes 1. So those Q's will cancel. So here, these two fraction unbounds, they don't cancel, because this really is what the body sees as being unbound. So again, it's the peripheral fraction unbound. This is what the liver sees. So this is a true fraction unbound, and this is what the liver sees. And so the liver sees this as 1, but it sees this as the true. The liver doesn't see it, but I mean the rest of the body sees it as a true fraction unbound. Tough stuff, but you can do it. All right, what happens with a high extraction drug as far as the half-life goes? So this is a drug cleared by the liver, high extraction. We have still the half-life is dependent upon volume over clearance. Clearance for a high extraction drug is approximated by Q. Our volume of distribution is VT times fraction amount of plasma over fraction amount of tissue. And we can see then what's going to happen here with our half-life for a high extraction drug. So if we had a decrease in Q, we would expect our half-life to increase. If we had a change in our fraction unbound in tissue, let's say an increase in fraction unbound in tissue, our half-life would decrease. If it were a fraction unbound in plasma increase, then our volume would increase, therefore our half-life would increase. So hopefully you can see with these equations that we can do a lot of stuff. And obviously if our half-life increases, what are we going to need to do? Increase our tau. So we're bringing this all the way back so you can see that this is a lot of work to try to figure out what to do with our dosing regimen. All right, thanks for your attention. You may need to listen to this a couple of times. Don't feel bad if that's the case. I know I would have to. Thanks, and I think that's it. I want to make sure. Yeah. Okay, thanks.